Big business was a major factor in the industrialization of America. Entrepreneurs like John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie were considered captains of industry. Unfortunately, early business development created things like monopoly and conglomerate business, which bought out and eliminated rival businesses, creating a tighter grasp on the market. Laissez-faire is the theory or system of government that upholds the character of the economic order, believing that government should intervene as little as possible in economic affairs. The name laissez-faire comes from the French, meaning to leave alone or to allow to do. During this time, there were many issues like number 1, shortage of labor, number 2, great fluctuation in prices, number 3, housing, accommodation for labor, and number 4, foreign supplies. All these changes made people's lives worse. In the Hartford Courant article, What Becomes of Laissez-Faire, it said, thousands of idle miners were on the very verge of starvation. People were affected by the industrial system. The derangement of industrial system was becoming intolerable. The sharp advance in the price of coins was causing great suffering in London and other large cities. Laissez-faire reached its apex in the 1870s, during the age of industrialization, as American factories operated with a free hand. A contradiction developed, however, as competing businesses began to merge, resulting in a shrinkage of competition. The shrinkage of competition is what became known as monopoly, which is the exclusive possession or control of the supply or trade in a commodity. Adam Smith had many names, such as the father of free exchange and father of classical economics. Adam Smith was given these names because he strongly opposed any government intervention into business affairs. Trade restrictions, minimum wage laws, and product regulation were all viewed as detrimental to a nation's economic health. Adam Smith also believed that competition, the market's invisible hand, would lead to proper pricing, which played a large role in his economic policy recommendations. Adam Smith was part of the physiocrats, early economists in mid-18th century France, who responded to the plight of the merchant class. They argued against navigation laws, tariffs, business taxes, and special monopolies. There were a few others involved in laissez-faire, like John Stuart Mill, the man who laid out the cases for and against government interference in the economy in 1848. Lastly, Alexander Hamilton was an effective advocate for protectionism in order to nurture the nation's infant industries. Protectionism is the theory or practice of shielding a country's domestic industries from foreign competition by taxing imports. This image here shows how people felt when laissez-faire allowed John D. Rockefeller to monopolize. It also represents the first of many antitrust, anti-monopolies laws that were put in place. One of the biggest monopolies that the federal government broke up was Standard Oil. When Standard Oil broke up, prices dropped and alternatives or substitutes opened up to create more variety of choices to decide what customers like best. The alternatives that were created you may know as Exxon, BP, and Mobil. In the 1800s, business methods and terms like monopoly and business pools don't really exist today. Companies such as the Standard Oil Company were widely considered as a monopoly because of their executive control over the oil industry and the money they had to buy out their competition. Other companies followed their lead in the following years, like the Pacific Railroad Company. In 1882, they were known for creating really high wages and forcing farmers to pay extra to transport their goods. According to the Hartford Courant, it was stated that the monopoly of the Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroads have been one of the most oppressive instances of dictation that the business community has ever had to submit to. The photo above shows one of the hundreds of Standard Oil facilities in present America. The oil industry was prone to natural monopoly because of the rarity of its deposits. Rockefeller and his partners had to take advantage of both the rarity of oil and revenue produced from it to set up a monopoly without the help of banks. The business practices and questionable tactics that Rockefeller used to create Standard Oil would make the crowd blush, but the finished product was not near as damaging to the economy or the environment as industry was before Rockefeller monopolized it. Pools and agreements were also common among big businesses to divide trade, eliminating competition as well. Agreements were made between railroads to divide competitive business, sometimes by dividing traffic, usually by dividing income. The Chicago-Omaha Pool, dating from 1870, divided business among 3 railroads, effectively squelching competition from other carriers. People like Andrew Carnegie used economic depressions to buy out competitors and expand. Business also used trusts and bonds not only to develop a stock, but to sell it to help fund construction and expansion in new areas. The photo above is an example of a conglomerate corporation. A conglomerate corporation is a company that owns unrelated companies to have a wider grasp on the market. The example above shows how Standard Oil widened their horizons to own companies like BP, Marathon Oil, and Amoco. This form of business isn't necessarily considered a monopoly because all of the companies are owned by different people, but have the same CEO or parent company that watches over trade and production. Conglomerate business still exists today and can be found in many corporations such as General Motors and Kellogg's. On the other hand, a term such as holding trust is defined as a company that owns other companies' outstanding stock. The term usually refers to a company that does not produce goods or services itself, rather its purpose is to own shares of other companies to form a corporate group. Holding companies allow the reduction of risk for the owners and can allow the ownership and control of a number of different companies. Andrew Carnegie was a captain of industry because he worked his way up to the top and always believed in giving back to others. He was the CEO and founder of Carnegie Steel, which was at one point the largest manufacturer of steel in the U.S. In the Hartford Courant it said, "The will of Andrew Carnegie, which will be probated in New York within a few days, shows that the great Iron Master left an estate of $50 million, but not quite literally, measuring up to the terms of his famous utterance, 'To die rich is to die disgraced.' This shows that he believed in giving back to others and believed that you should give some of your riches to others before you die, because the wealth you have earned will never be able to be shared with others, even if you didn't quite live up to your goal of the amount that you would give back." Andrew Carnegie also believed in providing good benefits for his employees. An example of this is when he donated money to build a new library and gymnasium. In the Hartford Courant it stated, "Andrew Carnegie has given $100,000 for a library and gymnasium at Homestead, Pennsylvania, to be used mainly by his own workmen." This shows that he provided many benefits for his employees while other entrepreneurs and company CEOs did not care. Another person that was a prime example of a captain of industry was John Pierpont Morgan, known as J.P. Morgan. John P. Morgan was one of the founders of United States Steel. It was the largest manufacturer of steel when it merged with Carnegie Steel Company in 1901. He also provided the first initial donation, which started the Hartford Public Library. Without this first donation, the Hartford Public Library may have not been able to have been established. According to the article, it stated, "Mr. Morgan is well known as a benefactor of Hartford, having made the large initial gift, which made the Hartford Free Public Library a possibility. If he did not make this initial donation, many people in Hartford may not have been able to have access to books and other resources to better educate themselves." He also made better health care a possibility for the people by donating money to the Lying In Hospital in New York, which would provide more opportunities for people to have access to medical help and benefits. In the article it stated, John Pierpont Morgan, before sailing for Europe early in the month, announced to the trustees of the Society of the Lying In Hospital in New York that he was satisfied that the condition on which he offered them $1 million with which to build a new hospital building had been complied with and that the money was at their disposal. Henry Ford was another captain of industry because he founded the Ford Motor Company, which at its early start developed tractors for farm use that helped our economy. An example of one of his work practices that helped the company run smoothly, which in turn helped boost our economy, was when he gave bonuses to his employees that did not benefit from his profit plan. In the Hartford Courant it said, "Between 40 and 50 employees of the Ford Motor Company, including sales managers and other employees who because of their salaries did not participate in any way in the big profit-sharing plan which Henry Ford announced last January, have received checks as bonuses for work done in the course of last year." This shows that he gave his employees bonuses because they did not profit from his plan, so he compensated for them in a form of bonus checks. Henry Ford also boosted our economy by selling tractors to other countries. The Hartford Courant stated, "Henry Ford informed friends at the Detroit Motor Club in Detroit the other day that he had just notified France that the country could have 12,000 Ford tractors. He is now working on 6,000 to 7,000 for England, and all of these will have to be delivered before America's demand is met." This shows that he was helping America's economy because he was not only making tractors for us here in the U.S., but he was also making tractors for other countries, which helped us out. Another well-known entrepreneur, who was not a captain of industry, but was more of a robber baron, was Jay Gould. Jay Gould, in the 1860s, became a stockbroker on Wall Street and manipulated the price of stocks. In the Hartford Courant stated, in 1868, he used illegal methods to issue 100,000 shares of new stock for the struggling Erie railroads. This shows that he was a robber baron because he used illegal techniques to benefit himself. He also played a role in two well-known business scandals, the one, which I just mentioned, the other, according to the document, stating, rising from humble roots, he first attained considerable wealth as an untouchable trader on Wall Street during the Civil War. Gould became notorious for his role in two well-publicized business episodes, the Erie Railroad War, a struggle to control a major railroad, and the Gold Corner, a crisis precipitated when Gould tried to corner the market on gold to further his own business strategies. This article shows that Jay Gould was a very well-known robber baron because he looked for ways to benefit himself and not others in an illegal way. John Davidson Rockefeller was an American magnate and philanthropist. He was the co-founder of Standard Oil Company, which dominated the oil industry, and was the first great U.S. business trust. He was also a prime example of a robber baron. He formed illegal company mergers to benefit his own company and paid his employees extremely low wages to take control of the oil industry and gain more currency. In the article it stated, in 1870, Rockefeller Standard Oil Company of Ohio processed 2 to 3% of the country's crude oil. Within a decade, it controlled 90% of the refining business. Rockefeller reaped huge profits by paying his employees extremely low wages. This shows how he gained more money by not paying his employees what they deserved compared to other entrepreneurs such as Henry Ford, who did care about his employees. In another article, it stated, corporations such as the Standard Oil Company, established by John D. Rockefeller, took a different approach to mergers. They joined with competing companies in trust agreements. Participants in a trust turned their stock over to a group of trustees who ran the separate companies as one large corporation. In return, the companies were entitled to dividends on profit earned by the trust. Trusts were not legal mergers, however. Rockefeller used the trust to gain total control of the oil industry in America. This explains how Rockefeller used illegal mergers to benefit himself by taking total control of the oil industry at the time. Conspicuous consumption was a very common act during the Industrial Revolution. Thorstein Veblen defines it as consumption of valuable goods as a means of reputability to the gentleman of leisure. People would go out and buy expensive clothes and furnishings just to show them off so they could boost their social status. With everyone racing to boost their reputation, they obviously could not get to the top. Therefore, they needed help from friends and neighbors. They would celebrate with expensive feasts and give each other costly presents in an attempt to prove that one person was worth more than another. People would do anything and everything to prove their wealth to others. They would cut bathtubs from solid marble. They would install artificial waterfalls in dining rooms for entertainment. They would even go as far as decorating garden trees with artificial fruit made of 14-karat gold. These people would spend money for the sole purpose of display. They didn't care how much they spent, as long as they got the respect that came with all the money. This political cartoon shows a crowded department store. In addition, the customers were all dressed elegantly. People were literally rushing and one-upping one another just to try to prove that they were indeed the richest in town. Consumers got their products, and department stores got their fair share of profits. It was a win-win for everybody. William Boss Tweed built what was known as Tammany Hall, which was essentially a courthouse. However, this was no ordinary courthouse. With all that money on his hands, Tweed could not resist installing totally unnecessary items and equipment. What was supposed to be a $250,000 job became a $13 million job. Included in this hefty price were 3 tables and 40 chairs that cost $180,000, lighting fixtures that totaled $1.5 million, and brooms and cleaning equipment that cost about $41,000. Philanthropy was widespread during the Industrial Revolution. It is defined as the desire to promote the welfare of others, expressed especially by generous donations of money to good causes. People would give out money and goods to those who needed it. However, this is not as easy as it sounded. Different organizations had different views on how money and goods should be given out. The Boston Provident Association, for example, had more views on philanthropy. They would only help those who were deemed worthy of receiving money and goods. They would refuse to help drunkards, which was understandable because that wouldn't be a wise way to spend their money. Other organizations had a more scientific approach toward philanthropy. These organizations believed that the problem should first be recognized and then it should be addressed. You can't really solve a problem if you don't know what it is, but once you find it, you can come up with just the right method to repair it. It turns out that the major problem was healthcare, so organizations offered healthcare services and better managed relief operations for the poor. Once that was done, they could move up to smaller individual problems. We've been talking about organizations for quite a while, but some people were just lone individuals looking to offer some help. The Hartford Courant shows a newspaper article in which 2 employees that worked before mentioned newspaper received a letter from an unknown person offering them a path to immediate riches. As long as they sent the acceptance letter back to the mystery man or woman, they would receive confidential information on how to make big bucks in the automotive industry. This person must have had lots of money. They didn't care where it went as long as it made someone happy. This is just one of many examples that we see throughout the Industrial Revolution. Andrew Carnegie was a millionaire since he owned the largest steel-producing company in the country. He could not spend all of the money himself, so he used it wisely and spent it on building art institutions, libraries, and technical schools in the city of Pittsburgh. The people of the city did not have such things, and now they had the option to go to school, learn, and maybe one day follow the footsteps of Andrew Carnegie. The people would now have the education and experience to start a business of their own. One company, known as H&D Daniel, planned to give out milk to the poor people of their city. Their plan was to create a large tent on Court Square as a distribution center for milk between 6 and 7 o'clock every morning except Sunday. However, there would be a distribution on Saturday nights to ensure that people had milk for Sunday. This may not sound like such a big deal, but with so many people hungry and in need of food and drink, this was a dream come true. Giving away milk might not sound big, but once you put it in on a big scale, everyone begins to talk about it. Many industrialists were millionaires, some even billionaires. They kept most of their money they made, but with so much money, they had leftovers too. One industrialist, known by the name of John D. Rockefeller, invested $500 million into the Rockefeller Foundation, the founding of the University of Chicago, and a medical institute that searched for a cure for the yellow fever. The Rockefeller Foundation is a philanthropic organization that continues to function even today. The college continues to provide an education to those seeking their dream and career, and the yellow fever is not curable, but has at least a vaccine to prevent it from infecting humans. All of this would not be possible without the help of philanthropists. All of that money would have gone to waste, but instead was put to very good use by caring and generous people. The end.